Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Unfiltered commentary. Not your truth, the real truth. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for your support. Hey, folks, from the Washington Post. Quality of life plummets, taxes skyrocket, and New York City faces doom. By Michael Goodwin. And there's the front page of today's New York Post. And let's read on his article. I live in upstate New York in Binghamton. Former Democrat, now Republican, former local elected official. City council member, council president, 2006. So I know a little bit about budgets, not like New York City, of course, but I've worked on 8 of them. And I know what taxes can do, both good and bad. No man's life, liberty, or property are safe while the legislature is in session. That's how Gideon Tucker, a New Yorker who knew Albany as a former legislature, Secretary of State and judge, put it back in 1866. And those of you who think, well, things were different back then, it was more sophisticated now. No, people were the same. His wisdom, as demonstrated repeatedly over the ages, is timeless. Yet, is there something different, especially troubling about this time? The possibility of permanent decline, and ultimate destruction of New York, of the New York we know, is unmatched in modern memory. Now, he's referring to New York City. I live upstate, which is might as well be on Mars compared to New York City. And I think it's time that it's been talked about for years and years and years, never done. Never had the political will, I guess, or people in New York City just won't allow it. But I think it's time for upstate New York to separate and form its own state from New York City. If the Democrats want to give statehood to Washington, D.C., we'll do like we used to do in the 1830 to 1850, with all the compromises, one slave state, one free state, to balance power. To make upstate New York, it'll more than likely be a Republican, it'll be a red state. You want to give statehood to D.C., I don't think it's legal, but we'll make a trade. Washington becomes a state, upstate New York becomes a different state from New York City. I think the time has come. Even before the pandemic, this state's been driven into the ground. I just sold my business, and the number one reason why I sold, property taxes. They're incredibly, they're huge. I have just a regular commercial building, nothing fancy. Little convenience store. I pay over $6,000 a year in just city, county, and school. That's not counting state or federal taxes or insurance or anything. Not a mortgage, nothing. That's a lot of money. $520 a month just for local property taxes is a ton of money to a little guy like me. Republicans reduced to hecklers. Well, in this state, yeah. Albany Democrats, oblivious or reckless or both, I think they're just oblivious, are marching toward the cliff in Alf E. Newman, what me worry way. That's the guy from Mad Magazine, for those that don't know. The rising, of course, of stop goes unheeded. Washington is sending trainloads of money to blue states to bail out their high-tax, high-spend habits. As longtime government guru Dick Ravitch writes in a Wall Street Journal op-ed, Congress has been generous, allocating more than $12 billion to New York State, $6 billion in New York City, $6 billion to the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and $9 billion to the state schools. Yet, we have some of the lowest test scores for kids in the country, and they feed them nonsense concerning race theory and all kinds of stuff. And this wokeness crap that's infiltrated everything else is now all the way down to kindergarten and the first grade level. The state's tax take raises the total budget to be adopted at $212 billion. some $18 billion higher than the fiscal year that just ended. With all the revenue shortfalls, how in the world can they justify an almost 10% increase? They should be cutting because their revenues are down. I had to do it for years until I just recently sold my business. You got to cut where you can. And I couldn't cut anymore. I got to the point, what do? Unplug all the coolers? Turn off the heat? Turn off the air conditioning? What do? Not have any insurance? I mean, what do? Florida, which has 2 million more people than New York, would do with spending $97 billion this year. That's less than half. I read somewhere that New York State, per Medicaid recipient, pays double, twice as much as the Medicaid recipient does on average in the state of California. These so-called progressive leftist capital state of the United States. New York sends double. There's something wrong here. Despite the bailout and the December pandemic stimulus and the ones before that, Governor Andrew Cuomo and lawmakers are launching a $4 billion of new tax hikes. Even after all that money, they just printed it out and shipped a lot of it to New York. They're still raising taxes, $4 billion. Apparently being the highest tax state by most measures doesn't satisfy them. They want to be number one across the board. I think the case is made now for separation. We'll call it an amicable divorce. Irreconcilable differences, I believe they do in California. It's time for upstate New York to split off from New York City and become its own state. It's been done before with West Virginia. Just because it was a long time ago doesn't mean you can't do it legally and it can't be done. Naturally, they say only corporations are the really rich will be hit, but don't believe them. Tax hikes trickle down and that they tend to reduce the economic activity of those who pay them, of course. A decline that eventually hits everyone, having the government redistribute more tax money is, at this historic juncture, a terrible idea. I mean, I have no problem with people that have a lot of money. I don't care. God bless them. Whether they inherited it or they earned it, whatever. It's fine. They can do what they want with it. And what these people do, everybody thinks they have rooms full of money and these rich people roll around naked in it. It's crazy. They invest it. They don't leave in the bank at 2%. Only a fool does that, especially when you have money. And in fact, people that are in the upper 1-2% of this country in the pandemic year, their net worth has gone up 40%. How do you think that happened? They invested it. And that investment creates businesses that hires people, that spends money at more businesses, that hires more people, and on and on and on. It's an economic driver. Besides, even if we're true that only the rich would get hit, raising taxes sends the wrong message in a state where so many people and businesses have left or are thinking about it. I'm seriously considering. I'm about 85% certain. I'm 64 years old. I'll be 65 this November. I'll be leaving the city that I was born in and grew up in and go to Tennessee. It's heartbreaking for me. I don't want to do that. But I got to have a new chapter in my life. Maybe find a different job after being in business 23 years. It's going to be a big change and a big shock, but I'm prepared for it, and I'm kind of excited it's going to happen. And I'd rather stay here, but it looks like I can't. The answer for many is no, no, hell no. What business will want to come here now? Why would existing ones continue to pay more and more for dangerous and dirty streets and arbitrary pandemic shutdowns? The answer is no. And they have given up on New York City. The proof is the sagging real estate market and empty storefronts. Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but basically what he's saying is you can stop the video if you want to read it. Look at some of these numbers. Murder climbed nearly 45%. Last year, additional 13% this year. The increase translates into additional 153 New Yorkers shot, stabbed, or strangled. Shootings up 72% Car thefts up 91%. Cities in a death spiral. It's unbelievable. And you can read the rest of this. Albany's answer? Put more handcuffs on cops, turn just about every criminal suspect loose, empty the prison, and raise taxes. Also, let's give money, $2.1 billion to be exact, to illegal immigrants by creating an excluded workers fund. It's insane. This leftist woke ideology has now infiltrated almost every bit of our society, especially in the deep blue states like New York. I don't want to sell everything I have. I have a lot of stuff I've accumulated in my life. I can't transport it all to Tennessee. I mean, they're going to have to give it away or just, I don't know, put it in storage and not pay the bill and let them auction it off. I mean, I can't transport everything. I'm going to take very little with me and start over again. And these guys are forcing me to do that. It's insane. Against that backdrop, there was zero surprise in the bulletin of bad news released by Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. He reported Tuesday that of the nearly 2 million jobs the state lost during the pandemic, less than half have been recovered. And you can read on here about what sectors have done better, like construction. I like this one, though. New Yorkers would be lucky if Albany had its version of the Hippocratic Oath requiring rulers to do at least do no harm. That's a Hippocratic Oath for the doctors take. Combined with a decriminalization of most quality of life offenses, including street prostitution, Albany is hell-bent on heaping more degrading experiences on those hardy souls who don't or can't leave, all because it can't afford its spending. My understanding is Manhattan during the pandemic, 500,000 rich people left Manhattan. They're not coming back. They have the means and the will both to get the hell out. Many of them have gone upstate here. A lot of them haven't. But because New York City has its own income tax. And those people are gone. Absolutely not coming back. You can read, about tax and spend, and he doesn't talk in woke terms, but that's talking about Andy Cuomo. He was supposed to be the moderate for a long time. It's not what you say, it's what you do. You can say you're a moderate, but you act like a woke, progressive leftist that destroys every institution, everything you touch, then that's what you are. So to get the beginning of the article, so the Gideon Tucker's warning about life, liberty, and property not being safe while the legislature is in session, we had Cuomo's destructive presence as another reason for New Yorkers to be extra fearful. And he has a little caveat about voter ID. Reader Matt Connolly calls voter fraud identity theft and tells a story. He writes, my youngest sibling lives in Missouri and found that a vote was cast under her name in Georgia. He has his Georgia Secretary of State's office, and that vote could be removed and not included in the presidential recount. He was told no. After the Senate runoffs, my brother wanted to know if a vote was cast in his name again. The Secretary's office told him they took down the fake online account, but would not say if votes were cast. Problem solved in their mind. It's you can read the rest here about Biden. I can't even tell you how heartbroken I am. I'm 85% certain I'm going to be leaving this area. The only thing that's keeping me here is it was an elderly relative. I just sold my business for a lot less than I should have got, but it's New York State. In Tennessee, you can live freer as well. They don't rule and regulate you to death. There's no state taxes. The economy there is flourishing. Same with Florida. Like the article said, they have 2 million less people, but their budget is less than half of New York's. I don't want to hear New York has unique problems in Florida. That's BS. BS. Unique problems in California, too, where you spend double on Medicaid recipients. That's a crap ton of money. There's something going on, and it's not good. And I think the gentleman is right. We all see our ups and downs, personal lives, businesses, states, everything, our country. But this time I think he's right. New York is in permanent decline, meaning New York City. Those of us that live upstate, that think way differently than those in New York City, God bless them, that's the way you want to think, but don't drag us down too. We're clinging on to the lifeboat, and you're trying to pull us under the water, and we're trying to protect ourselves and save ourselves from drowning. And you guys keep pulling us under. It's about time we cut ourselves off from New York City. We'll fight over where the line's going to be for the new state boundary, but it has to be done. Because if it doesn't, upstate New York, with the economic problems he's had for 30, 40, 50 years, is going to double and triple in misery. So the choice is easy, but the upstate people have the political will to put pressure on Albany. We'll see. But this is only the beginning, folks. Don't let it kid you. When this inflation hits, and it's going to, just as bad as the late 70s, early 80s, as the budgets go up and up and up and up, and they slowly bleed you. I did some figuring one time. Between local taxes and state and federal, I have to work 4.5 months for free before I can see any money at all. How would you like that? They want slave reparations? Where's our reparations for working a third plus of a year for nothing? Where's our reparations? The only thing we can do is leave. And that's what Americans have always done. I give them credit. It takes a lot of guts to get up and leave the country or the city or the state you were brought up in, where all your memories are. And I'm mad because I'm going to have to. And I think it's ridiculous. We can blame the totally self-unaware people in Albany. And most of it comes out of New York City. We need to detach ourselves if we're going to survive. Until next time, folks, goodbye and good luck.